Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a little bit of a different video, but I'm very excited to film it nonetheless. So today's video is going to be all about my favorite authors. We are going to be diving into whatever the first book I read from them was and now what my favorite book from them is. This has been a big trend on Instagram recently, and I also just finished watching Oh Hey It's McKay here on YouTube's video about this. She also did one where she did like the first book she read of a specific trope and then her favorite from that specific trope. So if you want to see that as well, please let me know. So in no specific order, because they're all around me and it's just going to be the first ones that I pick up, we are going to start with the ones right next to me. We're going to start with Miss Candy Steiner. The first book that I read from Candy was Blindside. Blindside was a very, very hot topic on Instagram in like spring of 2022, I want to say. A couple of the reasons I think everyone was like obsessing over this book is because it's college NFL. We had spicy lessons. We have an inexperienced heroine who reads books, and I believe this book is sort of one of the first ones that really kick-started that trend or trope, I guess now, of book boyfriends reading their like girlfriends' books and like spicy scenes and reenacting them. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that sort of trend in books now started with this one, and that's why it sort of got so popular. But this one follows Clay and Gianna, and to be perfectly honest, they were cute, but I didn't love them. Like Clay, I love Clay. Clay is such a little sweetie. Well, he's hot, but he's still like nice and sweet. You know, maybe he can be both. But this one, it does actually have some fake dating in it as well, because Gianna is determined to win over this guy and Clay is determined to get his ex back, which didn't sit particularly well with me, but you know, it was part of the plot. But I really just like their relationship development, and it just felt very like cute, and it felt like Clay was like always looking out for Gianna. Like he definitely had his own stuff going on in his own life, but it was just a nice little book. I think there were some cringy moments, but overall I gave it a 3.75 star or something. It was pretty good. However, my favorite book from Candy Steiner, my favorite book in general, and that's a big statement because I've read it a year and a half ago and I haven't reread it since, so definitely need to reread it soon to confirm that it's still my favorite. But my favorite book from Candy Steiner is Quarterback Sneak. This one, oh my god, this book, it still like gets me all excited and like giggly and just like kicking my feet even just thinking about it. It follows Holden and Julep, and Julep is the coach's daughter, which I'm gonna eat that trope up every time. And Holden is the NFL team's quarterback. Now, Julep is also, I think she's potentially majoring in physiotherapy or something, so she gets to like shadow and like work for the team during one of the semesters, and that's kind of how her and Holden like kick it off. And then I think they might also be like neighbors across the street, so like forced proximity. Hello! I adore this book so much. The one like scene that sticks out to me is Julep is doing like yoga in their backyard or something, and she's doing it like amongst all of Holden's just like veggie patches, because Holden is a big gardener, and that is a trope that I want to see more of in books, is the hero being like a big green thumb and a big gardener, because Holden and his little like cucumber patch, I'm gonna say that every time that I talk about this book, but it's absolutely adorable. Julep is also really into pole dancing, so there's a couple of scenes which are quite good, quite spicy. There's also quite a bit of like trauma and PTSD representation, I want to say. More so just trauma representation and like working through grief and like family death and things like that in both characters, so they can definitely relate to each other and like I don't want to say trauma bond, but they can just relate to each other and sort of help each other through these moments. And at the time that I read this book, it was like very pivotal for me. It definitely made me think about some things, and I did indeed cry. But yeah, Quarterback Sneak by Candy Steiner is forever gonna be my favorite book from her. I don't think she's ever gonna top it, to be perfectly honest. I just adore this book so much. All right, next stack that is within reach, we are throwing it back to like the beginning of my reading journey, I suppose. So the first book from this author that I read is one that I still very much love, but if I read it now, I'm not 100% sure if I would like it as much. So the first book that I have from Miss Monica Murphy is A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime. This one is a high school boarding school romance, which nowadays high school romance, not my thing. Don't like it, don't want to read about 17-year-olds, quite frankly. But this one definitely does have some like darker undertones. It definitely follows like the elite of this world and it follows them at their boarding school. Now this one does have slight bully elements, I would say, which again, not a trope that I'm a fan of these days, but apparently I liked it in this. And so Ren and crew are paired together to work on, I think it's like a psychology paper or something, and they are honestly just the biggest opposites ever. Crew is a real big playboy, to be quite honest with you, and Ren is like the total opposite. She wears a purity ring, she is determined to wait till marriage, she does not want anything to do with a man, and Crew corrupts her, shall we say. It feels like a little like kind of book, you know. It's not a masterpiece, but it like scratched an itch. I don't know that I want to describe it like that. If I say that this book is like reminiscent of Wattpad, I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean it in the way that it's like staying up till 3 AM giggling, kicking your feet over some weird little literature, you know. But she has been dethroned as my favorite, and maybe it's because I love sports romances now, but she has been dethroned by Playing by the Rules by Monica Murphy. This one again does have some taboo undertones, forbidden undertones would probably fit it better. It is a brother's best friend or best friend's little sister romance, and it just like ticked all the boxes for me in terms of those tropes. It had like all of the sneaking around, it had the forbidden aspects, it had the like climbing in and out of each other's windows, it had the sneaking out in his car, it had the like scenes where they would have to pretend nothing's between them in front of the brother. It just like, it hit every nail on the head. Can I tell you what the plot of this book was? Not particularly. I don't remember it a whole lot, but they're both in college. It's a college NFL romance. Are we seeing a theme? It again gave me those like giggling, kicking my feet over a Wattpad book vibes, but again, not in a bad way. The next pile that I have closest to me is potentially a controversial one. So the next author that I have is Miss H.D. Cullen, and the first book that I read from her was Haunting Adeline. This book right here is a controversial one, and I think the one that I'm going to tell you is my favorite is going to be even more controversial. So Haunting Adeline follows Zaid and Addie, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with the plotline of this book, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but in case you're not, it is a stalker romance and it's very dark, and I believe Addie lives in like somewhat of a sentient house. It's her grandmother's old house, and she like finds her grandma's old diary, and her diary basically reflects everything that Addie is going through, but like 80 years earlier or something. And yeah, it was just a very interesting book. I think at the time I really actually quite enjoyed it, but looking back I'm like, I think I might have felt a little bit of pressure to say that I loved the book. It was still good, like I still liked it, but I don't love it, you know. But it was my first H.D. Cullen book, and I don't mind her writing, so I'm like happy to have found her. And my favorite from H.D. Cullen, I don't see a lot of people show their love for this book, and I think that's because it's a very like opinion splitting one. There's a word for that, but I can't think of it. So my favorite from H.D. Cullen is Does It Hurt? This one is a shipwrecked romance with like thriller mystery aspects to it. I think the reason that I liked it so much was just because it's unlike anything that I've ever read. So in this book we have Enzo and we have Sawyer, and Sawyer actually attempts to steal Enzo's identity one night because she's on the run. She's American, and this whole thing is set in Australia, which probably another reason I liked it. Maybe I'm biased, but so yeah, Sawyer is trying to steal Enzo's identity. Enzo finds out and he's like, not on my watch. So he kind of like kidnaps her and he like takes her out on his boat, and yeah, it does some kind of morally grey things to her. There's definitely some consensual non-consent in this book, which usually not the biggest fan of. Didn't love it in this book, to be perfectly honest. Didn't really like it, but I think just everything else about this book made me really like it, so I don't know. Anyway, they go out on Enzo's boat and they wind up getting shipwrecked because there's a huge storm that rolls in, and they get shipwrecked on this island with this like lighthouse. And fortunately, or unfortunately, there is a caretaker on the island who like looks after the lighthouse and sort of takes them in, and at first he seems like a really good guy. He's just like trying to help them out, but things quickly divulge and take a pretty creepy turn. And I think I just loved the sort of like twist elements in this book and the very like thriller, mystery, horror at some points elements, because I don't read that in a lot of romance books, so it was just like nice to experience it in this one, I guess. But it was good. I enjoyed it. I'd recommend it to anyone who wants a bit of a like morally grey thriller, kind of like dark romance kind of read. Moving on, we have a little bit of a different one. We're gonna break the mold of this video a little bit. So the first book that I read from Nikki Sloan was The Frat Boy, and this one just so happens to be my favorite as well. I love this book. I genuinely want to convince everyone that I know to read it because I think it was just so fun, so like refreshing, so spicy, but also such a good story. So this one follows Colin and Madison, and the two of them have a little bit of a like dislike kind of relationship. I think they know each other through college and just like don't really like each other that much, but the two of them are desperate for money, and the two of them respond to this casting call for adult entertainers, shall we say, and they rock up and they realize that they have to perform with each other. Well, they don't have to, it's totally like consensual. It's like there's a big thing around consent and feeling comfortable in this book, but they rock up and they realize that they have to perform with each other, and they're like, don't really like you, don't really want to do this with you, but also like I need money and you're kind of hot, so fine. So yeah, they get through that, and the owners of the house and the like content creation company, shall we call it, offer them a position to like come and live in the house. From memory, I think the two of them actually needed a place to stay, so it all ends up working out pretty well. It's just like a super spicy fun time, to be honest, but there's still like some emotional depth. They still actually do form like a really nice relationship. What the hell is that? They still form a really nice relationship. I think it's very like understanding and just like level grounded and level headed, and I ended up really loving this book. It is still my favorite. I've definitely read a few other of Nikki's books, and this one still stands out as the best. So yeah, she is still my favorite. She's my first and my favorite. Right, jumping back into some more dark romance books. The first book that I read from A. Zavarelli was Crow. This one is an Irish mafia romance. It's very formulaic, but essentially, what is her name? Mackenzie? Essentially, Mackenzie rocks up to Lachlan's club and she's looking for a job as a dancer. However, Miss Girl does have ulterior motives. So one of Mackenzie's best friends has actually gone missing, and she believes that Lachlan and his crew are responsible. And so she goes looking for a job with them, determined to get to the bottom of where her friend has gone. But in the meantime, her and Lachlan go on this like enemies to lovers journey, and they fall in love. And yeah, he kind of promises to help her track down her friend, and it's just like a nice little mafia story, you know? My favorite from Miss A. Zavarelli is Kingdom Fall. I'm gonna try not to get reflections on it. This Kingdom Fall, this is one of the books in the Underworld Kings series. The Underworld Kings series follows the Society, which is sort of like an underground mafia kind of organization. They're a little bit more slick about how they operate. It's this huge series all set in the same world, all following the Society, but each book is written by a different author. Such a fun time. I've not read any more in the series just yet, but I'm definitely excited to kind of investigate them and check them out. Now, we have Natalia and Alessio, and this one is actually a nanny romance. So Alessio is the kind of like enforcer or debt collector for the Society, and he obviously can't be taking his little boy to work with him, so he needs a nanny, and that is when Natalia comes in. Now, I don't really want to tell you actually that much more because there is a whole big plot twist, but Natalia does have some ulterior motives, and Alessio kind of doesn't really catch on for a while, and when he does, oh girl. Alrighty, we're gonna move away from the dark romances for a little minute, and we're gonna talk about an OG. An OG, a favorite book of mine and another favorite book of mine. So this book, let me just tell you what book it is. So this is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This is the first book that I ever read by Elle, and this is the book that kick-started my sports romance obsession. two and a half years ago, this is what started the hockey obsession. So The Deal follows Hannah and Garrett, and Hannah is like really excelling in her classes. She gets a fantastic like top of the class result on one of her exams, and Garrett sees this and he's like, can you tutor me pretty please? And so eventually Hannah agrees to tutor Garrett, and it becomes a bit of a mutually beneficial relationship. So Garrett sort of helps Hannah gain some status because obviously he's like captain of the hockey team. Mans is widely known on campus, and they sort of go on a little bit of a friends to lovers trajectory, and I really love this book. The campus-wide hands-off rule, tea. However, my favorite book from Elle Kennedy ever, and one of my honestly just favorite books in general, is actually Hannah and Garrett's daughter's book. This is The Gra Effect Again by Elle Kennedy. This is the first book in the second generation series, and this one follows Gigi, who is Garrett and Hannah's daughter. And Gigi, naturally, as she's Garrett's daughter, gets into hockey. However, she definitely does struggle with being in his shadow. She really wants to achieve something that Garrett has never had the opportunity to do, and that thing is playing in the USA's Olympic hockey team. However, in some aspects of Gigi's hockey game, she is lacking a little bit, and so she enlists the help of Mr. Luke Ryder, who is the joint co-captain of the men's team, I believe. And oh girl, I love their relationship so much. There's some delicious tension between Luke and Gigi's ex because I believe they're co-captains. Oh, it's so good. This book definitely had me feeling all the butterflies. It's also some of the best spice that I've read in a hot minute. Yeah, I just really enjoyed watching their relationship kind of develop and flourish, and like, oh, just the very like gradual development is chef's kiss. Alrighty, we're gonna swing back round to some dark romance, and I'm sure you've been wondering, if you've been watching this channel for a while, where is Miss Cora Riley? And don't you worry, because she is right here. So the first book that I read from Cora was Bound by Honor. This one is very much the typical mafia romance. It's honestly the blueprint for mafia romances. It's very typical, very like formulaic. It's an arranged marriage between the like Chicago princess and the New York prince, capo, whatever. It's their arranged marriage, and it definitely has the very stereotypical mafia tropes where he's like a big morally grey scary man. Yeah, it's their relationship. There is a little bit of other woman drama in this book. There is a little bit of cheating, I'll tell you right now, but honestly by the end of the whole arc of like this entire series, I did end up forgiving Luca, and I do actually quite like his character now. However, my favorite is Twisted Pride. This is the third book in the Kimura Chronicles, and it is a kidnapper captive romance. So again, it follows the capo, this time of the Las Vegas mafia, and he has the bright idea to again kidnap one of the Chicago princesses, shall we say. Yeah, he kidnaps her, he holds her hostage, and they sort of like make up this whole farce to convince her family that he's like torturing her, because I can't remember what it is, but Remo wants something from her family and they will not give it to him, so he takes their princess, obviously their daughter, their blushing bride, because he does kidnap her on her wedding day. But yeah, it's their relationship, and I actually quite liked it. In the first two books of the Kimura Chronicles and in some of the books of the Born in Blood series, you do get to see Remo, who is the capo in this book. You do get to see him, and he is unhinged. He is psychotic. He is a murdering machine. So to see him sort of like gain this like little soft spot for Serafina in this book and like sort of, I guess, like relax for a second, it's really nice, and I very much enjoyed their relationship. And I think one of the key moments in this book that did actually convince me of their relationship was that Remo let Serafina go. He was like, off you go back home, like I don't want you involved in my life, I don't want you to have anything to do with me if you don't want to be here. So he sends her back home, and Miss Serafina obviously crawls her way back to Remo. And yeah, I just like, I guess, appreciate when that happens in a kidnapper captive romance, because it's like still Stockholm syndrome-y, but like at least they gave them a chance. That's so messed up, but yeah, Twisted Pride was my favorite book. Okay, we're gonna stick to the dark romance for just a second. I have two more authors to talk to you about. The first book that I read from Miss Sophie Luck was Brutal Prince. This one is again another mafia arranged marriage. However, this one's a little bit different. This one definitely is not as like traditionally mafia, I would say. It's obviously definitely still an arranged marriage to like unite the two families. But in this one we have Ada and Callum is sort of like the heir to the Irish mafia, and Ada is the daughter of the Italian mafia in Chicago. And so this book unfolds like most other arranged marriage mafia romances. However, Ada actually tries to kill Callum on their wedding day. And man survives. He winds up fine, and he's like, I still want to marry you, I still want you in my house, I still want you as my wife. But yeah, they still end up getting married, and it just follows them through honestly a little bit of a tumultuous relationship. Ada is what I would describe as feisty. She definitely does not want to be held back, she does not want to be married, but she's forced into it, and she sort of has to come to terms with it and sort of like get on with Callum. One thing that I will always bring up when I'm talking about Sophie Luck's books is her ability to write action scenes. I think she's definitely one of the best authors that I've come across that can write action scenes. It just feels very like play by play, you're right there with them. It's just written so well. And my favorite book of hers is no exception to that rule, because my favorite is Savage Lover. Savage Lover honestly has even more action than Brutal Prince, because this one is very reminiscent of like a Fast and Furious kind of movie. There's a lot of cars involved. Both of our main characters are very heavily interested in cars. Camille, our heroine, is a mechanic, and Nero is, I don't know, a bit of a playboy, but he just likes collecting cars. He likes like the old classic kind of like muscle cars. And so from memory, the two of them actually meet at this illegal street race, and the cops wind up busting this meet. From memory, I believe Camille winds up jumping into Nero's car, and he like speeds out of there, runs from the police, hides from them with her, and honestly it just keeps getting better and better from there. There's a caretaking scene. There's also, again, circling back to Sophie being so good at writing action. There is a heist plot in this book. Yeah, Nero is honestly just like so hot, but he has a very like caring soul, I guess. For people he likes, he really cares about them. Yeah, that is my favorite book from Miss Sophie Lark. I simply could not film this video without including one of my favorite small town romance authors, and that is of course Miss Devney Perry. First book of hers that I ever read was Indigordge, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. This one is a, how do I describe it? This one is a one night stand to dislike to lovers romance. So we have Griffin and Winslow. Winslow is the new chief of police, I believe. She's a new police officer in town, and on her first night there she winds up hooking up with Griffin, who is like, I think he's the oldest or the second oldest brother of the Edens family, which is who this whole series follows, and he has this real thing about hooking up with people who are like permanent residents of the town of Quincy, because he just like wants to have a one night stand, never wants to see them again. So when Winslow comes a knock on the next day because there's been a murder on his property, he is like, oh shit, oh shit. Yeah, Griffin kind of becomes a little bit standoffish, doesn't really want to help her because he realizes his mistake. But this book overall, I really enjoyed it. It does obviously have a little bit of a murder mystery subplot to it, which all of the books in the Eden series by Devney Perry do have like mystery or like thriller or like murder mystery aspects to them, which definitely makes the story a lot more like intriguing, and you desperately want to get to the end. They're very bingeable. And as she is no exception to the rule, my favorite from Devney Perry is Crimson River. This one definitely has the heaviest mystery subplot. In Crimson River we have Lila and we have Vance, and Lila is the owner of like the little bakery in town. She's like friendly with everyone who lives in the town, knows everybody. She's just like this kind of sort of like happy-go-lucky little sunshine kind of girl. However, she does have a issue where she like overworks herself. She's like in love with her job, but it does get to the point where she does need to sort of be like forced to take a break, and so one of her sisters steps in and like forces her out of the bakery to take a day off. And with this day off, Lila decides to go for a hike in the mountains. However, on her way back she stumbles into this man and he assaults her. Now this guy's been living in the wilderness. He's like really freaked out by the fact that he's bumped into another person, but obviously Lila goes back to town and she's got a little bit of like residual trauma from the whole interaction, because it was, he choked her out, you know, it was pretty intense. And so Vance comes to town and he's like on the trail of this guy who was living in the wilderness, and he hits up Lila and he's like, listen, I've been chasing this guy for upwards of 10-15 years, I need your help. And so Lila helps him, and they sort of like go on this little journey to try and find this guy. And there is a whole, when the dots connected, when the twist happened, wow, the whole mystery plot of this book was just like insane, incredible. It definitely takes you on a ride, but just having this sort of like simultaneous development of Vance and Lila's relationship while also they're trying to hunt down this guy, it's like, it's so cool. It's so cool. It was so good, kept me hooked the entire time. And yeah, that one is definitely my favorite of Devney's. And then we have this huge stack of all the books that I've just talked to you about. I really hope you guys found this video a little bit interesting. I really enjoyed watching McKay's version of this, so I figured I would film my own. But yeah, I always love talking about some of my favorite authors and some of my favorite books of theirs, so this video was very fun. It definitely did remind me of like how many books I've genuinely really loved and how many good books I've read, because listen, I've been a little bit of a book slump recently, so this video was very beneficial for me. And yeah, I don't know if that made any sense to you, but thank you so much for watching. If you love any of these authors, if you want to check any of them out, definitely comment down below because I would love to talk to you about them. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe because I would love to have you here. My Instagram and Goodreads are always linked in the description if you want to check them out, if you want to hit me up, if you want to see what I'm reading. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I had such a good time today, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye!